all Africans should speak in one voice, and this is really a good exercise that we from all walks of life, from different countries in Africa, are coming and talking and discussing on this topic of unity. So with that note, I would just open the floor for Q&A, question and answer. We have 15 minutes for question and answer. And please, those of you who would like to raise questions, please name the person to whom you are directing the question, and please try to make your question as brief as possible so that we can have as many questions as possible. So now the floor is open, and please also don't forget to introduce yourself and to name the person to whom you want to pose a question. So now the floor is open for discussion. You can raise your hand, or you can text your question in the chat box. So thank you very much. Rahel Casa has raised. Rahel, over to you.
Thank you very much all for your great presentations. My name is Rahel Casa from Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. I wanted to ask your reflection, especially Dr. Lakat, on how we Africans can utilize and capitalize the opportunity created by AFCFTA to strategically enhance the continent's social integration and solidarity, and for it to serve as one platform to promote the continent's indigenous wisdom. My other question would be transferred to Professor Mamo. How can we leverage the contemporary technological developments and the fact that our continent is endowed with youth population to promote and integrate the continent's indigenous knowledge and the learnings from history to its development agenda and to promote its unity? Thank you.
Thank you, Rahel. So as others prepare their questions, can distinguished speakers respond to the question raised by Rahel? First, I would give the chance to Dr. Liaquat. Over to you.
Thank you. Again, thank you, Ms. Ryan, for your question. A very important and a very powerful aspect that we need to deal with. One, in terms of our economic liberation and freedom to achieve through the work in terms of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area and the work done in that regard. The one for the youth to be involved. One is from the various platforms that the youth have, media, through social media, and to be able to utilize technology, begin connecting with youth across the continent, identifying business opportunities in those regions, where we then create trade platforms where the youth are able to start and to begin with each other. It also be included in the curriculum and in the university platform as well within the school, so that youth begin to know each other. And by knowing each other, we can start to trade and identify what trade opportunities exist. For example, and have certain resources which are much more available. It's a competitive advantage for the country, and that is the second. Then for these platforms and we've been engaging with the African Union in terms of creating these platforms for the youth, through the AU Youth Envoy, through the various possibilities for the youth to have a youth parliament where youth are represented in Africa, and then they begin by.
Yes, and then you tell us.
Thank you, Dr. Liaquat. Next, Professor Mamo, would you like to reflect on Rahel's question? Yes.
Yes. Thank you very much, Rahel, very nice. The question you asked is very good. You're right. The resources Africa has is huge. But you know what Africans do? They export natural resources. And that's what they do. What then others add value to the natural resources and sell it to them. So their own resources is not a blessing to them, it's a curse to them. Because they pay more despite the fact the resources comes from them. This is a serious issue. Our coffee is now in Ethiopia, Starbucks is making money out of it, not Ethiopia. Starbucks, the brand, when they sell their coffee, they say Ethiopian coffee. But Ethiopia has not, Starbucks should have been, approached and said, you are making, all right, all these billions, but why not also share with Ethiopia or something like that? Nothing happened. So we have problems like that. We have also our own crop, teff, is now growing all over the world now. So many countries now do it. The intellectual property is in the hands of a Dutch farmer. Why would they take our teff? And they should have the intellectual property. It's not the Ethiopians that fought them. It's a German said this is wrong. You should not do it. Even for some reason, for whatever reason, the Dutch guys still won. So we have this problem, and we do not know how to add value. This is the same thing that happened to Nigeria's oil. When Nigeria had oil, they didn't want to do the refinement in Nigeria. They started about 3 refineries, but they said the corruption was so strong. What they did was they outsourced it to America. So their own oil is refined in America, and they buy it back from America at a high price. And now I heard Dangote is now trying to do the refinery to be done now in Nigeria. I don't know what is going to happen, but now they are saying after so many years. But the reason they gave was when people ask them, why did you do this? They say, oh, Nigeria has no engineers. But in America, we are told over 300,000 engineers exist. Nigerians exist in America. You see, very complicated lying. Very strange things are happening. And Africa is really very badly affected by corruption, by some people taking advantage, but all the country suffering. So the rich resources we should have the sovereign wealth fund. We should make it for the people of Africa to own it. If that has happened, and we create a very good system, and we manage it very well, trust me, the sky is the limit. Africa will really be gaining very much, and even the rest of the world will match. Even our solar energy, even the Sahara alone, we have an unsold African solar energy network we have created, and we did it in 2011. We started it. You will not believe the study done is that even the solar energy from the Sahara alone will give free electricity to all of Africa, and even Europe we can give them. Things like that. Even you make also the Sahara desert green. Many opportunities exist to do if we do it scientifically, with moral intelligence, intellectual intelligence, with honesty, sincerity, humility. And if we work together like that, and we really appreciate also our unity, trust me, the great opportunities exist, but we still are not moving in that direction. And I think that's why we need this unity, and this has to be done systematically and properly, and not just have the Organization of the African Unity as it has been formed, and then also have the African Union. But then most of the funding for the African Union comes from outside. I'm told a lot of the funding is from outside. Why should it be like that? Why, when we have all these huge resources flowing out, something like 6 times more resources every year goes out of Africa than what comes in. Over 70 billion every year goes out of Africa. Illicit financial flows, many things like that Africa is suffering from. I think it has to be resolved. We need a new leadership quality, governance qualities, institutional system building quality, systematic, very effective systems. We need to do quality systems and with high standard we need to develop. I think if we don't do that, we'll have a problem. I appreciate you for asking the question. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Rahel, for the questions, and Dr. Ligat and Professor Mamo for responding to the questions. I see one question in the chat box, and I see also Addis Adam raising his hand. First, I will read the question from Asheng An in the chat box. It is the question is directed to you, Professor Mamo. It says, one of the challenges in Africa is youth and employment. How can one Africa address the skills gap to have courses which can enable the youth in Africa to be employed in any country in Africa? That is a question by Asheng An in the audience. There is also another hand that I see from Addis Adam. Addis Adam, can you speak? Can you raise your question? And please also indicate to whom you are posing the question.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, I would like to appreciate our presenters and speakers of this webinar. Actually, I have one question. I mean, as Professor Mamo and even as Raskin was explaining, the future of Africa is basically relying on the youth and on the youngsters. So many people these days basically don't have trust on this, on the youngsters, because most of African young people are making their futures in the Western countries. They want to move. They don't want even to live in Africa. They want to move to the West, Europe, America, or other Western developed countries. So many people argue that who is going to work for Africa? I mean, if the current generation is not committed enough to change Africa and achieve what we are just talking right now. So how do you evaluate and see the commitment of the current generation? That is my question. And my Professor Mamo and Ras, they can reflect. Thank you.
Thank you, Addis Adam. And I also just before this is the last round of questions that we are trying to solicit from the audience, and I just would like to also pose a couple of questions to the presenters. The first question is regarding the brain drain. So the best brains from Africa are going to the Western countries, and ultimately it is the people who will take responsibility to develop Africa. So if the best minds are leaving, then how can we imagine a prosperous and developed Africa? How can we contain this massive brain drain that is leaving Africa? The other is about the population. Like in Africa, the population size is growing very fast. Nigeria, a country in Africa that has the largest population. Ethiopia is the second country in Africa with a huge population. But can we think about also, other than talking about the size of population, can we also think about quality of population, like in terms of educating the population, in terms of promoting people to protect their culture and identity. So, can you say something about how Africa can have a quality population together with the number that we have been talking about? I'm just posing this question both to Ras and Professor Mamo. Over. Professor Mamo, you can take the first chance. You are muted, Professor Mamo. I can see you are muted.
Oh, am I muted? Okay. Am I okay now?
Now we can hear you, yes.
Oh, you can hear me. No, they are very good questions you are asked. The youth must be change makers and game changers. And if we do not change our youth, then Africa will not really make any difference. In fact, when we say unity, it must be actually how to bring about connections. So the interconnections of the unification is quite tough. I have been involved in a few projects I could tell you. In 2003, we had about $2 million where we tried to see if we could connect inter-African universities, in other words, linkages, and then making sure that students from different universities also spend in other universities. So from Addis Ababa University to Makerere University, Ibadan, and from Cape Town University and so on. So movement of students to do that so that when they graduate, they do like that. Even we are thinking there's a Pan-African University, but the Pan-African University is also not very strongly organized. The idea was to make all the students from every part of Africa to join. So then they start collaborating and so on. Things like that is what we have been thinking. The other thing we did was for brain drain challenges, we created what is called PATI, Pan-African Talent Hub. How we can create the people who are outside, all right? The people who are working, all the talented people, their talent, how it can be, all right, brought back to Africa. So we actually created it. We made it even a community of interest company. We registered it in Britain. And we now even are also working on what we call ASSIST. It's a transformation innovation type thing, where we want interconnections, global South, inter-African, even inter-South-South collaboration, not just moving to the North. So we are working on specifically how to do it systematically. The main issue is this: the youth, the education system also has to change. Education is not good to just make people get degrees and then become jobless, all right, on job seekers. We must create job creators, all right? Graduates that actually do this. Then even the education curriculum has to change. There should be problem-based learning, project-based learning, action-based learning, work-integrated-based learning. We have the Bangalore model, Silicon Valley model. There are different models by which graduates, before they graduate, they know what to do. In other words, they actually can create. Entrepreneurial universities we need to do. On the indigenous knowledge side also, the inclusion of indigenous knowledge. We are now engaged in creating a new university called Assyria University. The main idea is to actually in the curriculum to make sure that we will do it online, to make sure all this indigenous knowledge that has been not included, has been excluded, could also be included. And there's also the International Internship University, where again this university will also help. There's also the one entrepreneurial university. It's a very good brother of mine. He's Cameroon originally, but now lives in Finland. His name is Dr. Pascal. He's directing it, but we are all board members. We are creating also entrepreneurial universities. The main idea is to actually make our youth genuinely to be change makers and game changers, and practical, not just seek jobs, go out the rest of the world, but be engaged in the rural areas, in agriculture, everywhere. They can do so many things to do in Africa. There's so many opportunities. I mean, you would not believe what the young people can do. In every sphere, they have that chance, but we need to motivate them to get engaged like that. Also collaborate, also get to know each other, work with each other. Mobility. My other suggestion I had was how even every university must open up opportunities for that. I mean, even Addis Ababa University, when Emperor Haile Selassie and others were there, even Jomo Kenyatta's daughter and others were all educated. There are many Africans that used to come, were allowed in Addis Ababa University. I don't know whether they still do it, but in the Emperor's time they were, because the Pan-African idea was serious with Emperor Haile Selassie. No matter what other mistakes he made, the key thing on the African Union side, without his effort, there should not be any, to be honest, and we should acknowledge this, even if we shouldn't use it, we shouldn't use this politics, strange politics to say no, but without him, it would not have been done. I know the Organization of African Unity didn't bring unity. I mean, what did it bring? Even though it is there, it was coup d'etats, military things, all these foreign interferences, CIA and others, all interferes. I mean, Kwame Nkrumah was removed by the CIA, and Patrice Lumumba, all of them. Okay? Sankara, the French, all these colonial efforts also get interfered. When you become more active, like we talk like this now, they don't like us. They try to say these guys trying to unite Africa means they see it as if they're going to lose the resources, so they fight you, which is so wrong. We are in a difficult time. So all our youth also must change their mindset to say the main effort is to make their Africa first, value and so on. And then if they have to go elsewhere, they should do that, but not to be seekers and then just flying around and so on, and then be useless. It's not good. I think they should work with their own people, and they should make a difference. That's the main thing I strongly recommend. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Mamu. Ras, can you reflect on some of the questions directed to you?
Okay, so let me speak from a perspective of grassroots, and from the perspective of someone that understands the dynamics of higher education and institutions, higher education institutions, as we would understand that higher education institutions are usually limited to urbanized areas. So if we speak about youth, we speak about a specific cohort of elites, youth that will become professionals. And we need to be honest with ourselves that the majority of the masses of Africa's young people are still stuck at the grassroots level, at a rural level, at peri-urban level, or they're not necessarily living in big cities where they have access to university spaces and university programs, or let's even say university outreaches, and I'm speaking from someone living in George, in the Western Cape. In the Western Cape, it's a big province, but you only have Cape Town, which has education facilities and education institutions where you have CPUT, you have UCT, you have UWC, you have all of the different colleges, but it's concentrated very, very, and if you look at the vastness of a province or of a country, So I want to emphasize, what I want to come in here from the perspective of civil society. George Soros is not necessarily a good man, but he's funding a lot of NGOs and he's grooming a lot of young people to think within a certain paradigm, which is maybe, let's say, neoliberal Western paradigms, and it's not emphasizing what we think of as Pan-African developmental, or let's say communalistic or socialistic paradigms. So what I want to emphasize is here, as someone operating in civil society, it's very hard to find an African philanthropist or a Pan-African NGO complex that really works to radicalize the thinking of young Africans. The University of Johannesburg did something radical whereby they said all the first years, no matter what faculty you are, you need to do a module in decolonization. So imagine across Africa, across technicons, if you come into a university, no matter your ethnicity, whether you are Mara, whether you're Pedi, or whether you're Zulu, or whether you are Tigray, or whether you are Shona, or whether you are Hausa, or whether you are, all of these dynamics, whether you are Hutu, whether you are Tutsi, all of these different ethnic dynamics and ethnic conflicts that we can highlight from country, from Cape to Cairo, whether you are Berber amongst the Arabs, all of these things So if every university in Africa, if every college in Africa can now say, if you come in first year, here's a module, and this module is peer reviewed through the African peer review mechanism, and then you will also start to be able to encapsulate a singular level of thought within the intelligentsia of Africa. But it's not. We're very far from that. It's only you, Jay, as an entire university. So whether you want to do IT, whether you want to do public management, whether you want to marketing, whether you want to do water science, whether you want to do conservation, you have to do a module in Pan-African decolonization, whereby they run through Kwame Nkrumah, Thomas Sankara, they run through Patrice Lumumba, they run through Samora Machel, Nelson Mandela, Robert Sobukwe, Nasser from Egypt, etc., etc. They ground you in a module. So that's what I want to say now. Until NGOs, until we have a system. In South Africa, you have so many NGOs and they're all grant funded by Europe. They're all grant funded by George Soros's complex, by Zionists, by people that want a Zionist world that believes that so-called, I don't want to be sounding anti-Semitic, but the Zionist ideology means that they believe that only Jews have right towards the whole world. Whether they want to deny it or not, but that's what Zionism entails. And someone that is of Jewish heritage that believes in Zionism believes that the rest of humanity is not entitled to God's grace. Unfortunately, the Talmud, that's what the Talmud is. So what I want to say is, if these NGOs are operating in Africa like they operate in America with Antifa. That's why Trump has so many issues with Antifa and with George Soros. But he's also doing it in India. He's doing it in Nicaragua. He's doing it in South Africa, whereby he funds these NGOs through his thing called Open Society. And then these young people are Africans. Then they come into our communities. Then they cannot address the issues of Africa. They then want to address identity politics. They want to address issues of LGBTQ. They want to address issues of gender-based violence. They want to address issues of human rights. They want to address issues of democracy, which further then doesn't build Africa, but creates an environment whereby neoliberalism can thrive and neocolonialism can thrive. If you understand, because he's also connected to the corporate the corporate complex of America, corporate complex of the West. They all interlinked. Hence, if you look at even Elon Musk the other day on Twitter said, no, this man, he hates humanity. George. So he called him out straight, Kanye West. And once now I want to go to entertainment and social media, how it's important for us to understand how young people love arts, how they love culture. In Nigeria, you have someone that like Burna Boy, who is able to capture the entire globe through its arts. And it's very revolutionary because he's ancestrally connected to Fela Kuti, and he always sings about the neo-colonization. He always sings about Shell and how the Niger Delta and how, so we must also understand how young people appreciate that and how we can use that to make sure young people come back home. If you look at Ghana is trying to get the African Americans to come to Ghana to come and invest. So as a nation state, as a country, as a ministry, as a Ministry of Culture, etc., they are utilizing various forms. If you look at the Crown Council of Ethiopia, they knighted the Minister of Culture of Jamaica the other day because they understand how weapons like reggae is important to unite Africa. Weapons like reggae is important to unite the diaspora, to empower the diaspora, to inspire the diaspora to come to Africa, come back with the brains, come back with the skills. So let's do the works. It's day-to-day works. Let's empower the young people. Let's run our NGOs. Let's have programs. Let's invest. From the university to the NGO, to the grassroots, to the church, to the festival, all over, also even media, even using TV, creating TV programs that speaks to this higher consciousness, because now we are dealing with the African Renaissance, like the Europeans and the...
Yeah, thank you, Ras. Thank you. You have raised very important...
Sure, thank you, everyone. Let's be enlightened. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was an important message.